Weekly concept. Notes from the past. Essential question. Why is it important to keep a record of the past? Untold stories. For generations, people have come to America to start a new life. We know some of their stories through letters, diaries, and photos that have survived across centuries. What happens when there is no record of the past? What do you know about your own family history? Talk about it. Write 3 words or phrases that describe why keeping a record of the past is important. Then talk to a partner about what you would like somebody to know about you 100 years from now. Captions. Disease Center at Ellis Island. Inspection at Ellis Island. Vocabulary. Use the picture and the sentences to talk with a partner about each word.
Depicts. This painting depicts an important moment in our nation's history.
Detested. My little sister has always detested taking medicine. Detested. Detested means disliked or hated very much. Detested. Detested means disliked or hated very much. Discarded. The discarded, crumpled up paper lay around the trash can. Discarded. Discarded means thrown away. Discarded. Discarded means thrown away. Eldest. I am the eldest of 4 children. Ignored. The dog sled team ignored the command to stop and kept on running.
Obedience. The dog had no obedience training and did not obey his owner's commands. Refuge. The people took refuge in the bus shelter during the rainstorm.
Treacherous. The ice and wet snow made the sidewalks treacherous to walk on.
Your turn. Pick 3 words. Write 3 questions for your partner to answer. Genre: historical fiction. Freedom at Fort Mose. Essential question: why is it important to keep a record of the past? Read how a boy uses a diary to tell about his life of freedom in a new place. By September of 1754, 12-year-old Lucius Jackson and his family had been living at Fort Mose in St. Augustine, Florida, for a year. They were part of a group who had escaped from a plantation in South Carolina. They had heard that Fort Mose was a place of refuge for runaways. Over the years, many people were willing to endure the treacherous journey there in return for the promise of freedom. During his time at Fort Mose, Lucius kept a diary to record what happened there. 17th September 1754. It has been raining for more than a week now. This weather reminds me of my days learning to read and write back in Charleston. When the rains came, we couldn't work in the fields, and we were forced to stay in the cabins. We knew that Mr. Slocum, the landowner, detested getting his boots wet, so he rarely came to check on us. He thought that all we knew were work and obedience. Miss Celia took a great risk writing letters and words on the dirt floor of the cabin for us children to learn. She said that, as the eldest member in our cabin, it was a risk she was willing to take. Learning to read was easy for me because I was so happy to learn how to turn letters into words and words into ideas. I believe that reading is a gift that cannot be measured. Mr. Samuel Cantor believes this too. He is a farmer who lives near us and who gave me this fine diary. He said, "You are doing a good thing, Lucius. In years to come, people can read about this place and understand what we have risked to gain our freedom." October 1754. Last night I got to go on patrol with my father. My duty involved walking along the wall of the fort with him, looking and listening for anything unusual. It has been a while since we came under attack, but we cannot let down our guard. We also listen for any people who may be coming here to seek freedom, as we did about 1 year ago. While on patrol, I thought about the night my family came to Fort Mose, and how scared but hopeful all of us felt as we entered through the big, heavy gates. I must stop writing now, as it is my turn today to help gather palm fronds, which we lay out in the sun to dry. Once they are dried, they can be used to repair older huts and to build new ones. Each week more people come to the fort. Our priest, Father de las Casas, keeps the records, and he tells us that there are almost 100 people now. October 1754. Last week a new family arrived all the way from Virginia, and like everyone else, they arrived almost starved and weak beyond belief. My mother helped the family by giving them clean clothes to replace the ones they had been wearing, and their old ones were quickly discarded. The day after they arrived, I tried to talk to the boy who was about my age, but he ignored me. The next day I tried again to speak to the boy, whose name is Will. I showed him this diary and explained that it depicts as accurately as possible our life at Fort Mose and the people who come here. He seemed surprised and asked, "You know how to read and write?" "Yes," I told him. He looked at me without speaking, but I could see a question in his eyes. "Do you want to learn?" I asked him. "Is it not dangerous?" he asked quietly, looking around to see if anyone could hear us. I smiled, remembering how long it took me to understand freedom and what it meant. "Will," I said to my new friend, "here at Fort Mose, you are free to learn. and I am free to teach you. We began our lessons right away. Reread. When you read historical fiction, you may come across facts and ideas that are new to you. As you read Freedom at Fort Mose, stop and reread important sections of the text to make sure you understand them and can remember key details. Find text evidence. You may not understand why Lucius Jackson is at Fort Mose. Reread the introduction on page 397. By September of 1754, 12-year-old Lucius Jackson and his family had been living at Fort Mose in St. Augustine, Florida, for a year. They were part of a group who had escaped from a plantation in South Carolina. They had heard that Fort Mose was a place of refuge for runaways. Over the years, many people were willing to endure the treacherous journey there in return for the promise of freedom. During his time at Fort Mose, Lucius kept a diary to record what happened there. When I reread, I learn that the story takes place in 1754 at Fort Mose in St. Augustine, Florida, a refuge for runaway slaves. From this, I can infer that Lucius and his family came to Fort Mose to escape slavery. Your turn. Why do Lucius and his father have to go on patrol? Reread page 398 of Freedom at Fort Mose to find out. As you read other selections, remember to use the strategy reread. Make connections. Talk about why diaries like Lucius Jackson's represent Make connections. Talk about why diaries like Lucius Jackson's represent an important record of the past. If you could read a diary from any era in the past, what time period would you choose? Why? Theme. A story's theme is the main message or lesson that the author wants to express to the reader. To identify the theme, pay close attention to the character's words and actions. Find text evidence. On page 397, I learn that Lucius has been keeping a diary about life at Fort Mose. As I read the first diary entry, I learn that Lucius feels that reading is a gift. These details are clues to the theme. Graphic organizer. Detail. Lucius had to learn to read and write in secret. Detail. Lucius records events at Fort Mose in his diary. Detail. Lucius writes, I believe that reading is a gift that cannot be measured. Your turn. Reread Freedom at Fort Mose. What other details give clues about the theme? List them in the graphic organizer. Use the details to figure out the theme. Historical fiction. The selection Freedom at Fort Mose is historical fiction. Historical fiction takes place in the past, includes realistic characters, events, and settings, usually includes real people and places, and may include events that actually happened, is sometimes told as a series of diary entries. Find text evidence. Freedom at Fort Mose is historical fiction. I know Fort Mose is a real place that existed at that time in history. Lucius Jackson is a fictional but realistic character who writes in his diary about his life at Fort Mose. Diary entries. The story is told through a series of diary entries. The reader sees the events of the story through Lucius's eyes. Your turn. Find and list 2 specific details in Freedom at Fort Mose that show you it is historical fiction. Homophones. Homophones are words that sound alike but are spelled differently and have different meanings. Homophone pairs, such as there and there, are easily confused. Pay attention to the way a homophone is used to help figure out its meaning. Find text evidence. The word heard in the first paragraph on page 397 is a homophone. The word heard sounds the same, but is spelled differently and has a different meaning. I know heard means learn through hearing, and herd means a group of animals. They had heard that Fort Mose was a place of refuge for runaways. Your turn. Look for the following homophones in Freedom at Fort Mose. Tell the meaning of the word, and then identify the word's homophone, its spelling, and meaning. New, page 397. Week, page 399. There, page 399.
Write about the text. I responded to the prompt, write a diary entry from Will's point of view describing how he learned to read and write. A wonderful thing has happened since we came to Fort Mose. My friend Lucius has taught me how to read and write. First, he taught me all the letters of the alphabet. Then, as I wrote each letter, I said its sound out loud. It seemed to take a long time, but Lucius said I learned them even more quickly than he had. One day, Lucius wrote the letters C-A-T. I put all the sounds together and read the word cat. Tears of happiness filled my eyes because I could read. Strong opening. My first sentence catches the reader's attention. Sequence. I put the events in the order that they happened. Grammar. This sentence is an example of comparing with adverbs. Descriptive details. I used specific words to show a character's feelings. Your turn. Write a diary entry from Lucius's point of view describing how he felt teaching Will to read. Use details from the story.